Welcome to the Healing Place podcast, a space filled with inspirational stories of hope, along with practical advice for your healing journey. Your host is Teri Wellbrock, trauma warrior, writer, speaker, blogger, therapy dog handler, and founder of the Sammy's Bundles of Hope project. As a survivor and a thriver, Teri's mission is to shine the light of hope into the world by interviewing insightful guests from across the globe. The Healing Place podcast is a fiscally sponsored project of Fractured Atlas.
Welcome, everybody, to the Healing Place podcast. I am your host, Teri Wellbrock, and so super thrilled to have with me today Dr. Roseann. And that's all I went with was Dr. Roseann. So
That's what everybody calls me, Teri.
Right. Well, you're like the Dr. Roseann. So, but what is your last name?
It's Capanna-Hodge.
Capanna-Hodge. All right. And I meant to ask that and did not, but we'll go with
That's okay.
Dr. Roseann. So Dr. Roseann is a mental health trailblazer, founder of the Global Institute of Children's Mental Health, and is changing the way we view and treat children's mental health. I absolutely love that. And there's so much more to this. My gosh, you're author and yes, just the work you do is amazing. So welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we connected through another previous guest on the show and friend of both of ours, Deborah, and beautiful soul that I just loved.
A beautiful soul.
Yeah, for sure. So tell people who you are and what it is you do in the world.
Yeah, so I'm a psychologist and a therapist, and I really work with children and their families and have for this is my 30th year in mental health in different capacities. And I have helped thousands of families reduce and reverse mental health symptoms using only proven holistic therapies. Things like neurofeedback, biofeedback, nutrition, supplements, and of course, psychotherapy.
Beautiful. You're speaking to my heart. I'm that holistic person. I tell it on this show often.
And so many people come to me. I know, a lot of what you and I both do is help people find hope. And, when your child is suffering in any way, shape, or form, right, whether they're struggling in school or with friendships or they're difficult to parent, it is tough as a parent because we don't know what to do. And so often when people have gotten to me over these 30 years, I sort of become the last stop in the train. Some people I'm the first stop if they're already holistic and they just do a simple Google search. They realize there's a lot of evidence-based approaches that aren't being promoted by, traditional therapists and allopathic physicians for a simple fact, they don't have the training or knowledge, right? And we can talk about that and unpack that because I didn't have that training either. And I found the information on microfiche back in the day. So, but, I open that door to hope for parents because nobody is using the words like reduce and reverse symptoms. Like people are floored. What do you mean? And people sometimes get angry with me, my peers, when I talk about reversing symptoms. But it's something that I help people do. Not every symptom can be reversed, but some can. And sometimes all of people's symptoms can be reversed when we really take a scientific, methodical, hardworking approach. This is not a magic wand approach. This is really looking at those root causes and doing the work that needs to be done so that we can change behavior so people can live happy and healthy lives, and be resilient,
Yes. I love what you said about change behaviors because truly changing habitual patterns is just such a huge part of that healing journey.
Such a huge part. And I don't think we talk about it, right? So like parents and individuals, they don't know what they don't know. So we've sort of conditioned everybody to think that a pill is going to fix everything. Right. And sometimes people come to me, and when I mean that it is everywhere, that this is not a quick fix, you buy a package to work with me. You can't even work a la carte with me. So it's like super straightforward. And there is inevitably, every once in a while, somebody will call after 2 or 3 sessions of therapy and or neurofeedback and say, I don't notice anything. And I was like, who told you you're going to notice something? So they have this mindset that there's magic that's going to happen. And what I talk about, it's a 2-part process. Like what I do is get that nervous system, that central nervous system, to calm the heck down and get into that, sympathetic, parasympathetic, relaxed. I call it the hot tub state. And then we pair it with new learning, right? You can't get away with new learning. Like, it's like making a kid with ADD more focused, but then nobody taught him how to not be impulsive. Right. And so people get really frustrated, like with different kinds of treatments, because they're not understanding. We have to show people what to do. You have to break habits, right? Whatever that habit is, your negative self-talk, or you have obsessive compulsive behaviors, which are habits that are really deeply ingrained on a neurological level, and you can unwind it.
Yeah. And to me, that's just screaming brain plasticity stuff, where you're changing those ruts that have been created by routines, habits, however you want to label it, and just, paving that over and creating those new ways of doing things.
Yeah. And, we often understand this and have the patience for our kids when they're toddlers, right? So they're learning to not, touch the faucet. They're learning not to put, the entire thing of toilet paper in the toilet, And what do? We usually alter our environment. We give them lots of reinforcement, like, great job, right? And then when our kids get older, or us as adults, we don't have a lot of patience for ourselves in the learning process. And learning takes time and a lot of practice. And if you're somebody, or your child is somebody that has any kind of learning, attention, or emotional issue, it means it's going to take typically at least 3 times as long to learn something. And that doesn't mean you give up. It means you just get really good at being patient and having consistency. Not perfect. Nobody's perfect, but you really just put that investment of time, because, people, you can either invest your time and do things the wrong way and then just be so frustrated and overwhelmed and out of hope, or you can invest your time and do some hard work up front and have a payoff of a happier family.
Yeah. Yeah. As you spoke, I thought back to before I stepped onto the healing journey, I would be so irritated with myself. Like, why can't I logic my way out of a panic attack? Why can't I, and so I just wanted to logic my way out of it, not realizing how my brain, my trauma had impacted my brain and what happens in my brain when I go into a panic. But it really is a learning process.
And, when you have a trauma, that stuff just creeps up on your subconscious.
Right.
And I know a few years ago, I had a traumatic event where I was put in danger by a former employee. And I was like almost like a hostage situation, and I had to talk myself out of it. I mean, I'm really good at that kind of stuff. So I thought, and I just made a decision to basically work my way through this situation, because there was actually a child on site. And so I said, I'm going to handle it. Right. And when you're in a situation where potentially your life is in danger, you do the best that you can. And I did a great job getting through it. But what happened, of course, after was actually, it was traumatized. And I remember being like, I'm Dr. Roseann. How could I have trauma? Right. But it just crept up on you. And I remember and I'm such a forgiving, grounded person. And then I finally was like, this can happen to anybody. And you just have to do the work, girl. Right. And I was doing the work of what I thought I was doing. I was doing EFT tapping, and it just wasn't enough. And really what I needed to do was somatic experiencing. And that really helped me to reconnect to the sensations that I wasn't connecting with, and really, really quickly actually come to terms with it. And then I needed a grace period, right? A long time, that I made sure that I was doing my somatic experiencing techniques for a long time to get my body to not habituate to those triggers, right? So, which was loud noises for me because they were screaming at me and stuff like that. So, and I share this because, you know, obviously this is a dramatic situation, but those kind of things, Teri, right? Like trauma has expanded way beyond what we think. Right? It can be a medical trauma. Like so many of my parents that I work with are traumatized by their kids' experiences, getting help, you know, being hospitalized in psychiatric facilities and things like that. And they don't recognize it as PTSD and how much that interferes with their daily life, right?
Right.
You know?
Well, and we're talking about many people are being impacted globally with this pandemic and on a trauma level. It doesn't mean the pandemic is traumatic for everyone.
Yes.
But it can be a trauma for particular people depending upon their history.
And you know, Teri, what you bring to the table, right? So a lot of, you know, I'm on TV all the time, and what does everybody want to ask me? They all want to ask me, what's the long-term mental health effects, right? And who's doing well and who's not doing well. Well, it is very fascinating. First of all, if you're struggling right now, it's okay, because that's what you're experiencing. But it also means you need to take care of yourself. And don't try to pretend like you're not struggling, right? Just like when I was like, I can't have trauma. Like, and then I was like, I got trauma. I'm going to deal with it, right? And I'm joking. I mean, but it was hard and I did it. And I was super, hey, like I'm with a bunch of therapists. We have a team of therapists. And we, you know, I actually even brought it to the supervision, and we worked our way through it. And it was really amazing, like, you know, to get a lot of TLC and support. But you have to acknowledge it, right?
Right.
And that's the first part. And you're acknowledging it doesn't mean that you have to understand every emotion. It's that, oh my God, I'm feeling tightness in my chest, right? So what are people feeling right now? Is what I'm hearing is a lot of overwhelm, a lot of low motivation, right? Isolation, depression. You know, if you're not up physically moving, I'm seeing so much depression and anxiety in people. And, you know, what makes one person get through this terrible time and another? Well, we have to look at what are risk factors? What are things that are going to make you more stressed? So yes, a prior history of trauma in some ways can make this harder, but also if you've really done your work, you have a toolkit.
Yeah.
Right, Teri?
That'd be me.
Yeah, that'd be me. So like, you know, I also have things like a pool. So, you know, there's resources. That's why everybody's gravitating towards the country, right? Like I'm technically a suburb of New York City and Connecticut, and you can sell your house in one day here. Because they all move into the burbs. But
we just moved to an island, and everybody's moving to Hilton Head Island. Like it's crazy. So
oh, you're in Hilton Head?
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna talk, girl, because I love it there.
Awesome.
I love riding a bike at a beach in Hilton Head.
Oh my gosh, under that Spanish moss, and
it's just so lovely. Oh my God, it's really, really, truly a spectacular place. Everybody should go and visit.
Hi everyone, Teri Wellbrock here. Just wanted to take a moment to thank another sponsor of the Healing Place podcast, Diane Petrella, who has been on the show before and generously donated at the advocate level. You can visit teriwellbrock.com. It's TeriWellbrock if you'd like to be a sponsor of the show. Thanks so much.
Yes. But it, you know, what people are bringing to the table, if you have prior anxiety or you've already had ADD, some people are doing better. Like we said, if they had a toolkit and their environment is set up, some kids are learning from home, and a small subset are actually doing better because they have movement breaks, they have home cooked meals, right? And things like that. And then other people, the majority of people are not doing better. They are absolutely doing worse. And how do we know that? We actually already have survey research. So we have research from Asia, who was ahead of us in the pandemic, Europe, and then we have survey now research from the States that are looking at kids' mental health. So kids are significantly more depressed. No surprise there. And according to the American Psychological Association, they do an annual survey called Stress in America. 70% of parents have overwhelm due to pandemic parenting and additional things like including homeschooling. So, it's not easy right now.
Right. Yeah. And so one of the things that we had touched upon was resilience and in coping skills. So what are your recommendations for people to help build that up in their children?
So such an important conversation, Teri, because people ask me all the time, like, what have you seen in this 30 years? And I'm going to say that I have seen a dramatic increase in autism, and autism it's not because we're better at diagnosing. It took 12 years for the American Academy of Pediatrics to even update their criteria on that. In that 12 years, autism just went through the roof with old criteria. But the other thing that is so dramatic in what I see in children is just an unbelievable increase in anxiety and lack of coping skills. And zero resilience. And people they're using grades as a benchmark for mental health. So they're saying my kids are doing well in school, so that means they're emotionally healthy. And I'm here to tell you that's absolutely should never be a benchmark. And if you think your kid is anxious and they're showing signs, and we could talk about it, there's a problem. And most people, this is a really shocking statistic that according to NAMI, that it takes 11 years from the onset of a problem for somebody to get mental health help.
Isn't that crazy?
That is not a surprising statistic to me.
Right.
Because when you go back and do the history, you will see, I'll get like a college kid, I'm talking like kids going to Ivy League schools, flunking out of schools. When I go back and do the history, oh yeah, they had a hard time separating when he was in, going to preschool. Oh, he was, great student, but only had one friend. Like you hear these things, didn't sleep. All these kinds of signs, cyclical vomiting, stomach aches, all of these somatic symptoms. And then these kids sort of crash and burn without that structure in place, with a high level of independent, social activities and academic activities. And they just don't have mom and dad, or the structure of school, right? Because there's so much structure in school. And when left to their own devices, they sort of fall apart emotionally, right? And it doesn't mean that they're not intelligent, but we have to put our emotional intelligence, our social emotional learning has to be a higher skill. It's way more important than the academics. Because I'm going to tell you that you can have a straight A student and they don't have social emotional skills, they will struggle the rest of your life. And if you ask every parent what they want for their kid, they're going to say happiness. Yeah. So we need to remember that. And so how do we build those skills, right? First of all, it's never too late. I don't care if your kid's 28. At 28, you're going to need a therapist, is what you're going to need. But school age kids, preschoolers, middle schoolers, high schoolers, a lot of it is very much role modeling as a parent, but it's a very, very much parenting and how you parent your kid. So we know through research, one of the most, the kids with the highest level of social emotional learning are parented via a style called autonomy supportive parenting. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You are parenting your kid so that they can be autonomous. And that means loving limits, but letting your kids fail.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's how you build stress tolerance. So we're all so worried about our kids being uncomfortable, but it's through uncomfortableness that you learn what emotions are. right? So we're a culture where nobody wants to feel uncomfortable. We don't want to wait in a line, right? Like I remember going the first time I went to Jamaica, and it was an all-inclusive resort, Teri, right? My favorite kind of resort. And we had a cabana. It was amazing, right? And the Hodges, we like to have a damn good time, Teri, right? So I'm waiting in line for the smoothie bar, okay? And I remember feeling irritated that it was Jamaica time and not New England, New York City time, right? And I remember having this moment like, where the hell am I going? I'm in Jamaica. If I'm the first person in line, it takes 45 minutes. That's great. Who cares? And I had to like conscientiously say to myself, like, calm it down, right? And here I am. I'm like, right? And so we have this sort of intensity in our lives in the American culture that we very much have adopted. And so getting ourselves to take moments to relax, right? As I did there, but really very intensely in our lives. So our nervous systems are so stressed out that what we want to do is disconnect because we're so stressed. Well, that's the worst thing you do. You don't want to disconnect and get on to Netflix or scroll on your devices. Right. You want to reconnect to your body. And we can teach that to kids, starting with breath work. I taught my kids how to do breath work starting at like 2, even before. And you just have to do it with your kids, and you have to be a role model for that. And it's so important.
Yes, I love that. My 14-year-old, she's freshman in high school. And so, first year of high school, and we were driving to school, and this was probably, oh my gosh, maybe 2 months ago. Anyways, I said, so what's going on with your world today, with your life? Anything exciting happening at school? And she said, oh, I have this test and I'm a little worried about it. I studied hard for it, but I'm worried. And I said, kiddo, remember, your brain's a supercomputer. You've already put the information in. It's best computer in the world. You can get there. But remember, if you're feeling super stressed out, you're starting to go back here in your brain. So you just need to get some air in, get some of that breath going, bring everything back up here. And so we really did kind of talk it through in just a very simplistic way of, just close your eyes and take a second and get that breath in and just calm.
Amazing. What great advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, your stress hijacks. I mean, there's really probably nothing worse for you than chronic stress. And once we're in that stress hyperactivations, you're not thinking rationally. You're not taking in information in the same way. And it's great to do breath work once in a while. Like in the middle of the pandemic, I had all this crazy fun stuff going on. I was writing all these books and doing all this stuff and, all this. I was like, I call it my Corona creative period. I literally wrote 4 books in 4 months. So I'm not recommending it, but I'm saying I did it. And all of a sudden I was driving. And, it's very enjoyable to drive during the pandemic because nobody was on the road. And I felt that I was chest breathing. And I was like, I don't chest breathe. I haven't breathe out of my chest in like 25 years. Well, I had started to, between the sitting and the stress, even though it was great, fun stress, I had altered how I was breathing, and that is terrible. So I was like, you got to practice, so I've had to get back. Not that I wasn't doing it before, but it was way more automatic. So this entire time for a year, I've really been every day making sure I do breath. I did it right before this interview. I was like, you're getting too spazzy today. You gotta do some breath work.
You have that little moment.
Yeah, I just took like 6 minutes. And I just did, and sometimes I only need 1-2 minutes, right? If I'm just doing it. But I was like, I need some time. And I, went into a place that was a little more quiet and nobody bothered me. And I did it. And I actually feel like I took a little nap. It feels so relaxing that yet you feel more alert in a calm way.
Yes. And what a gift to yourself. I mean, truly, just like you said, 2 minutes. If you can gift yourself 2 minutes.
Yeah. And nobody has an excuse. It's free. If anybody can do it, pretty much of any age. It just requires the intention and the actual consistency, right?
Yeah.
So it's really important, and we can't pretend that we can live in a stressed out state. We have to do this. And so when we do this, we become what I call, there's a theory called stress inoculation. So we repel stress when our nervous system is in that more relaxed state. So I talk about a resiliency mindset, and resiliency, is about 3 parts, right? It's how you view, manage, and recover from stress. And so when I work with clients, I'm always asking, where are you in this, right? Where are you noticing differences in yourself or your child? Are they viewing stressors differently? So, what is it about chill people, right? So people often tell me, I always have like big projects and things going on, and my project manager, who's a former big, executive, said to me, I've never worked with somebody who is literally as grounded as you. And I was like, really? And she's like, you just don't sweat stuff in the same way, And I know what my triggers are. I know 100% of the gate, somebody who lacks integrity or is rude. That's when you see the mad Roseann, but you really got to push my buttons. But I just don't view stressors in the same way. I don't react to things in the same way. I'm always like, okay, what do we do about it? Like, it's hard to make me freak out, right?
Right.
But if somebody called and was rude and yelling at somebody, I'm like, who is that? They're out, So you have to sign 3 separate places that you'll have good manners when you work with me. Like, that's how serious I am. And that doesn't mean you're not distressed. It just means that you don't, you can say, I'm having the worst day, help me. That's different than somebody biting somebody's head off. Right. So we all know what our limits are, but being stress inoculated, you don't view stress in the same way because your nervous system does not react, because it has a healthy rhythm to it. We're all so activated right now in this pandemic. I don't know about you, Teri, but I truly have never seen people sort of lose their cool, lash out to more people than I have in this time period.
Right. Yeah. And it's true. And I've witnessed it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People are angry and they're frustrated. And so they're hate putting stuff on social, very negative, just those kind of things. There's a lot of people that I had to unfriend and mute, yes. During the political components and just many of the things that kind of we got whammied with in 2020 and 2021. So we have to develop this resiliency mindset is, first, if you're somebody who loses their cool really easily, whether you're an internalizer, like you shut down, you get withdrawn, or you're an externalizer, you lash out at people, verbally, physically, and everywhere in between, because that's what mental health looks like, right? Mental health doesn't look like, I'm depressed, I'm going to cry. Like, no, it's behaviors, right? So yes, somebody may be crying, but somebody also may be, most people with mental health issues of all ages are functional. They're walking around, they're just not operating at their best selves. And they always have physical signs, whether it's headaches, stomach aches, sleep problems, nightmares. That is way more startle effects, right? As somebody with trauma, you can all of a sudden startle easily.
Yeah.
And those are the signs that you kind of pick up from. Why would somebody startle all the time? Unless you live in my house and it's like living with the Green Hornet, and they every time I come in, they literally make a game out of scaring me, the whole entire family.
Well, I only laughed when you said the startle effect, because I'm not kidding. I joined Orange Theory Fitness recently because I really wanted to give myself a kickstart, because part of my pandemic was opening the pantry doors and going, ooh, chips, ooh. Like if food was becoming my comfort. Now I've changed my habitual patterns and I'm eating healthier, but I said, ooh, I'm going to go join this, and really give myself a kickstart for moving. And so anyway, I was there 2 days ago, and I'm on the rower. And so I'm doing my rowing. Well, they have us every 2, like the person's not right next to you.
Yes.
Spacing. But this little old lady's next to me and she screams, woo! And I was not much louder than what I just did. I didn't want to startle people. And she just keeps wooing, and I'm in my own little zone, right? Well, me with my trauma history, I'm jumping out of my skin and looking over to her like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? But it's true. You just have that. I mean, I know I have it.
Yeah. Well, you know, and then you're like, okay, I got to bring my earbuds with me next time, right?
Right.
Good that you can laugh about it.
Yeah, I know. Well,
You
you
know?
brought up your book too, and I want to give you an opportunity to talk because you have one that's launching right now, or has.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I wrote it. I wrote a book. It's called It's Gonna Be Okay. And the reason why it's called It's Gonna Be Okay, which is here and behind me, is that's what I tell every parent, because everybody who comes to me is distressed and they are out of hope, and I want them to know it's going to be okay. And there is always a way to improve mental health. There is not anybody who isn't all in that I can't help. I mean, that's just what happens. And so I've been doing this work for so long, right? You know, for 30 years in one way, shape, or another. And this book is really all of my work, and breaks down and shows people the 8 pillars. What are the things we need to do? What are the evidence-based ways? And there's over 40 pages of citations. And it's because I want people to know that things like vitamin D, you know, magnesium, anti-inflammatory diet, sleep, these are clinically effective ways to reduce and reverse mental health symptoms. And they're not getting this message. Yes, I dive into parenting and ways to parent for mental health. And I talk a lot about things that I specialize in, which is neurofeedback and biofeedback and PMF, because people need to know there are actual clinical treatments that are heavily scientifically based, and they're really designed to regulate that central nervous system so people can think and then take action differently, right? So as we talked about, if your brain is hijacked, you're not able to think and take action. I mean, it's kind of common sense, right? So we recognize that, as I mentioned, the toddler, right? We recognize that in a toddler having a tantrum, but yet when we see those same behaviors, whether it's an internalizer behavior or an externalizer behavior with a toddler literally flailing around, we don't see those in kids, older kids and adults, but those same things go on. They're just not quite as observable. And so we recognize that a toddler is not able to communicate or take action, but that same thing is happening to an adult or a kid. And we need to look at what can help them. And so in this book, It's Going to Be Okay, I literally lay it out, and people can take action, to some small action, and just be consistent about it. Some people like to do everything all at once, and that's okay too. The information is there. But what I say to parents, you know, is little waves create big waves. And so you just need to start small. And when you're so overwhelmed, it feels really hard, right? And some people want to work with me holding their hand, and we have a coaching program for that. We also have a summit, and it will be evergreen. So April 23rd to the 25th, we have a summit called the Get Unstuck Parenting Summit. And it's amazing speakers, lots of juicy information for people to really get started. And it's free. So, you know, I wanted to create free and low cost resources for parents, because I know it's not easy or convenient or expensive. You know, it's cheap to work with me. It's definitely an investment of time and money. And, you know, I work with people virtually too, but it's just not always possible. And many, many things parents can do on their own.
Yes. Hey, and I don't know if this episode will come out before that summit, but shoot me the link and I'll stick it out on Facebook so people, you know,
it's in that document I just shared with you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. I'll make sure to stick that out.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Any way to again, bring healing resources to people. And I love the title of the book because we talked about hope. And that's just, you know, an underlying theme for me. And I know for you as well. And it's going to be okay. Like if that doesn't summarize hope, I don't know what does. So
yeah. And when I tell people, you know, moms in particular, it's going to be okay. You literally just see their shoulders drop.
Yeah.
It's like they, they're almost afraid to believe at this point, and part of it is people are being fed this is the way, right? Like there was gonna be a pill. I remember working with somebody and she had 8 horrible reactions to different medications, including 3 times having psychosis. And this is not an atypical story, so it can be anybody's story. And 3 times being admitted into a psych hospital. And she still was like, do you think there's a pill that's going to fix it? And I was like, clearly it's not.
Right.
And I was like, your daughter has had 3 psychotic episodes due to the medication. It's time for something else. So, when people hit a wall, you are the CEO of your health, your physical and mental health. And I love Google. I remember Hilaria Baldwin and Daphne Oz were like, what do you think of Google? And I was like, it's the best. Everybody, there's great information out there. You just have to, weed through it and look at what's evidence-based. But, you can literally get onto Google Scholar now and get research. I mean, I didn't have to go to a library to find the research for my book. I could do it right from the comfort of my home. And so can other people.
Yeah. Beautiful. Those old Dewey Decimal System of, trying to find all that.
I had to explain what microfiche was to one of my 20-something-year-olds on staff. And they're like, I've heard of that. I think I saw it in a movie once. And I was like, that's what we used to do in school.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So how do people find you, get in touch with you, work with you?
So if people want to, you can always search Dr. Roseann, DRROSEANN.com. And I'm Dr. Roseann on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and Roseann Capanna-Hodge on Facebook. And of course, LinkedIn, you can find me there. And if you are interested in the book, it's going to be okay.com and it will be on Amazon.
Wonderful. Awesome. And I'll put links out and all that fun stuff for everyone as well. So, okay. Well, it has just been incredibly informative and wonderful to have you here. We could talk for another few hours, I'm sure.
Well, thank you for supporting, kids and families' mental health. I mean, they need as much support as they can get right now. And there's so much that they can do.
Yes. Amen. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us today on the Healing Place podcast. And remember, until next time, be gentle with yourself. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening today to the Healing Place podcast with your host and trauma warrior, Teri Wellbrock. If you enjoyed this episode and want to learn more about Teri, her mission, and the Hope for Healing journey, visit Teri's website at www.teriwellbrock.com. Thank you for liking, commenting, sharing, and offering your reviews on our YouTube channel, audio outlets, and Facebook page. And as Teri reminds us, until next time, remember, be gentle with yourself.